everyone, in today's quick Springboot tutorial, I will show you how to automatically propagate a request-specific key, like a track ID or authorization token, across your backend methods. Often your front-end sends a key that needs to reach an external API through your backend. But if your backend has multiple service layers, passing that key manually through every method quickly clutters the code. Clean approach is to separate that concern entirely. Your business logic should stay focused on what it does, not how the key gets passed around. In this video, I will show you how to handle that automatically using a simple interceptor and a request context. So the track ID just flows through your backend without touching your core logic. So let's get started. For this demo, I have created a simple REST controller with one endpoint. As you can see, it receives both the track ID and the actual business data. Ideally, the controller should just handle the business logic, but since the track ID needs to reach the underlying services, it ends up being passed manually through every layer. That is what clutters the code. Instead of passing the track ID manually through every method, we will use an interceptor to capture it once at the request level, right when the front end calls the endpoint. From there, the track ID will automatically be available whenever any underlying service needs to call an external API. So first we need to create a class to hold the information at request level, and for that we cannot use components as it is singleton or even using prototype, so the information should be only available at request lifecycle. And for that I create this one. In Springboot we have this possibility. Let's call it, for example, track ID context. I prepared the code here, and as you see, we use thread local, so this ensures that the information is stored only at request level. We provide a method to store the information, track ID, and one to retrieve it and to remove it from the request attributes. So this is the first thing. Then we need to define an interceptor that acts before or after the request. So we define one, we call it track ID interceptor. It should implement, so it's implement this one. It is Springboot, it is managed bean, annotated with component. You need to implement this interface that provide those methods, pre-handle and after completion. So this is two lifecycle hooks. So when receiving the request, we will add the information track ID to the local thread. And after completion, we call the clear method defined in our context. This is first simple. This is just the definition of the interceptor. We need to register this interceptor, and this by defining a configuration class like this. Config, let's call it web config or whatever. It is configuration class, and there we will register our interceptor. So this is, we inject our interceptor here. Our web config implements this web MVC configurer from Springboot, and this one provide this method to add an interceptor. So our interceptor is added like this and applied to this pattern. So you can change this pattern by specifying the context. You have more control on that. So it will be applied only on those endpoints starting with API. So our interceptor is registered now in our controller. So the track ID is automatically saved at the request level. So we can remove it from the service. We'll remove it from here. And of course, I need to adjust this method. We don't have any track ID here. Also, we don't need to have it here. And as you see, our code is much cleaner now. We don't need this information, separation of concern. Here we remove it from this call. Now we add this line. We have to inject this one. And as you see, our code now is much cleaner. So we need to add constructor, so they will be automatically injected. And as you see now, our code is much cleaner. What is wrong here? We don't need this information. And now if we run, it will work. This is the clean way to deal with things like that. So separation of concerns is very important. Avoid mixing business logic with security or authorization or tracking or whatever. So I hope you find this helpful. Thanks for watching and bye.